Hi, you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. This episode is sponsored by Big Tech's Ordnance, your soon-to-be favorite retailer for all of your firearms needs. BTO believes in only selling high-quality gear for responsibly armed citizens, as well as providing pre- and post-sale support. BTO values firearms training and supports firearms instructors nationwide. They even pay for their staff to train with high-level instructors to ensure that when you, as the consumer, reach out, you are taken care of. Today, we have Caleb Giddings on the show. I am so excited about this episode. There are a lot of perspectives in this episode that we have yet to have on She Shield. So, Caleb, I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the pod.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. So for people who don't know me, I am the general manager of marketing for Taurus USA. In our group of companies, we also have Rossi USA as well as Heritage Manufacturing. So I oversee marketing efforts for all three of those brands. Prior to that, I was the digital editor for tacticallife.com for Athlon Outdoors. And then prior to that, I was a freelancer on and off for, years and years. I started writing about guns in 2006 because I had gotten into, at the time, IDPA competition, and I realized that I could sell magazine articles to pay for ammo. And then I sold more magazine articles to pay for more ammo and to pay to go on trips and to do all of this stuff. And then before I knew it, I ended up on this little TV show called Top Shot, and that was what allowed me to transition from a part-time, sort of gun writer / person with a real job into working full-time in the firearms industry, which I've done since 2010 now. I'm also a combat arms instructor in the Air Force, which is a really cool title for someone who basically just teaches pilots to not shoot themselves in the legs with their issued handguns. The Air Force I'm in the Air Force Reserve, and the Air Force is unique among the branches that firearms instructor is a full-time primary job for a limited number of people. And I was lucky enough to land in that career field when I went back into the military in 2014. So other fun things about me, I really do love competition shooting. I've been at it for a long time. I've got master class in a bunch of different divisions in IDPA. They keep adding more divisions, so I have to go get master in those. I think the only one I'm not a master in IDPA in is PCC, which is fine because PCC isn't real. And then the hardest one of those I got my master class classification in I-Corps Classic Division, which is a revolver only shooting sport. And then just some other fun like Gee Whiz stuff. I have fast coin number 18 from Ernest Langdon. I have a 345 skill card from Matt Little, Graybeard Actual, who I believe you just had on before me. And I have the only pin of any color ever awarded by Gabe White to someone who used a revolver for the duration of the class. So I got a light pin from Gabe using a Taurus Model 82, and I missed a turbo pin by 0.25 of a second. So I mean, it was a hell of an accomplishment. And I feel great about it, but I also wanted to throw my gun across the range.
Of course. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm focusing on the 99%, positive things you said before that, because how incredible.
Absolutely.
Yes, that was so impressive, and I love the way you kind of set everything up to explain it. I'm hearing about those individual prizes more and more, like the more guest speakers I have on, and it's made me more curious about that. And I love that you all have those challenges to push yourself and also have a little memorandum from the class. So thank you so much for sharing that, Caleb. We have so many cool topics today to dive into. But before we do that, I'd love to hear about Taurus. I know that I am super curious about where you all are at right now with your plans and maybe some firearms that have recently come out. I know that there's a range event coming up soon. I'd love for you to also talk about, and I will luckily get my hands on some of the things you're going to talk about today. So if you wouldn't mind, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of people are familiar with the brand Taurus in that we're one of the largest producers of firearms for the domestic market. But a lot of those same people aren't familiar with what we're doing with the brand. So, when people think of Taurus, they might think of some of the, so honestly, some of the shitty old products that we used to make that we don't make anymore. And part of the story with Taurus has been the change in direction. So there was a time period, 10-ish years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, where Taurus in Brazil brought in a new CEO. He's our current global CEO, Silecio, and he basically cleaned house. He was like, we're getting rid of, like, if you were responsible for some of this stuff, like the curve and the spectrum, you're out. So they cleaned a house out in Brazil, and they also started to invest tremendously in modern manufacturing. I was just down there in July, and it's literally a state-of-the-art facility. We got this line where a robot picks up a blank piece of metal, and it feeds it into a CNC machine, and then another robot picks it up, and no human hands touch it until it gets to the end of the line, where it is a fully machined slide ready for small parts to be put into it, ready for the thing that a human being needs to do to it. And we bought these brand new CNC machines from Hyundai in South Korea. So that's one part of it, has been the massive investment in technology in Brazil, which is where the majority of our guns are made. The second part of it has been the culture shift in Taurus USA, which I'm proud to say I've been a small part of. But that started when the company relocated its headquarters from Miami to Bainbridge, Georgia. And if you don't know where Bainbridge, Georgia is, I don't blame you. Neither did I before I got this job. It is a small town that's about an hour north of Tallahassee. There's currently one Chick-fil-A and three hotels, but we're working on it. All right. We're getting some more. The Chick-fil-A came because of us. We
Oh,
moved
very
up
nice.
there, and they're like, hey, they're going to build a Chick-fil-A. Yes. So we
Okay.
got the Chick-fil-A, but the big driver behind that is we have this, giant facility in the States, which allows us not only to do U.S. manufacturing of products like our TX-22s, all of the heritage pistols are made in the United States. We're planning on expanding the lines that are made in the States to other lines, but it also gives us more ability to do repairs, to do inspections, to warehouse our own parts. So previously, if you wanted spare parts for your Taurus, you were kind of SOL. Now we sell those. You can go to Shop Taurus and be like, oh, here's the thing I need. I need a new recoil spring, or I need sights, or I need a new crane screw for my revolver, all of that stuff. And we can now offer that as a service. And again, we have Rossi USA and Heritage Manufacturing, but the driver behind that has been our boss, Brett. So my boss, Brett, the CEO. I'm super lucky in that my chain of command goes me and the CEO. So it's like I don't have, if I want something that I'm not sure I have permission to just do myself, I'm just like, call him up. Hey, Brett, can I do the thing? And then he usually says yes, unless it's a really crazy idea.
Nice,
But
nice.
like, but Brett's been in the industry for a while. He was at Crimson Trace. He was at Leupold. He was at Walther, which was where I met him when he was at Walther. And he's been driving the culture of change at Taurus, where we're not just hiring people who, are good at sales or are good at marketing or these sort of things, but we're also hiring people who like to hunt, who like to shoot, who are actually engaged in in the process of in the end user process with these guns, which leads to kind of how I ended up with the brand. So how long ago was this now? It was right in the height of COVID. Mid 2020,
Mhm.
Brett called me up and asked me if I wanted to consult on a project for Taurus. This is before I got the job. And I said, yeah, sure, pay me. He was like, okay. So I flew up there, and in the room, we had Steve Fisher, who some people know as Yeti. We had a couple other people who are high level revolver end users. We carry them, we shoot them at matches, things like that. And part of the reason why Brett had brought me up is because 10 years ago now, I wrote a piece about a gun very much like this Taurus Model 82, where I went and I bought a Taurus 82 and I took it apart and I tried to review it. And that gun that I bought back then was terrible. It had
Mm.
bad internal machining. It was out of time, which is where the cylinder doesn't line up correctly when you pull the trigger. So it shaves
Oh,
lead, which is bad.
right.
The gun itself was terrible, and I quite rightfully trashed it. And so Brett brought me in because he knew that I wasn't a friendly voice in the room for the brand. right? He
Mm,
says, if
okay.
we are going to launch this new project, if we're going to launch these high-end revolvers, I want to have somebody in the room who's going to tell us everything that he thinks and why it sucks. So that was, and you name another brand that pays people money to tell them that they suck. It's not. I've been around this game for a really long time. It's super uncommon. Um, and we've continued that trend. We've done another Revolver Summit where we brought in Daryl Bulkey and Brian Eastridge. We did a semi-auto summit where we brought in Matt Little. We brought in a couple other guys to talk about the products, because what we were trying to do is we want high-level feedback from guys who live and work with these guns and shoot them at a high level. And then we want to take that feedback and we want to turn it into products that someone who has $300 or $500 or maybe a little bit more to spend on a gun, we want them to have a gun that is built with the input of experts, but at a price point that everyone can afford.
Mm, I love that. No, it's very interesting. And yes, I will admit as well, the reputation that I've heard of is very similar to what you mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely a lot of jokes being made and thrown around. And
Some of the memes are really funny though. Like I get some
okay.
really funny stuff sent to me, and
Okay.
and I have to laugh at it. Like my favorite one
Right,
was the
of
one where it
course.
was like the three guys shaking hands, and it says Ford owners, people who believe in astrology, and gun owners, and then in the middle it's my Taurus is fucked up.
Oh my gosh,
So,
that's
and I was
hilarious.
like, yes, that's a
Nice.
good one. I like those.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you are being so transparent with the journey that Taurus has been on. I'm so excited to hear that you all are just kind of changing the narrative. And I know as an instructor and an influencer, I get questions about Taurus all the time, and I've always just said, I don't know. I think now that I think about it in the past, I do think I've made, a joke between friends, especially
Cool.
because I have had
I
a,
have.
right? Yeah. And so I know that like that has happened, but I got to this point where I was like, I really can't speak on it. I've never shot one. And I'm to this point in my career where I've just learned it's safer to say, I don't know. I've never done it. So I'm so excited to actually handle them myself and learn the story today. And speaking of firearms that are good for concealed carry, I get that question all the time. Like I said, what are some that are maybe out right now or coming out that you are particularly excited about?
I'm particularly excited about. I get excited about a lot of stuff, but the stuff I get excited
Okay.
about is weird. So, what we have out right now, in terms of concealed carry guns, we have the G3 compact, so G3C, the G2C, which is like, it's one of the best selling guns. It's routinely available for under $200. And it's very simple. It's a striker fired 9mm. The sights are fine. It's not going to blow anyone's skirt up, but it is built around the philosophy that I very much agree with, that everyone deserves a reliable firearm for personal protection. I don't care if you have $100 or $1,000, you deserve a reliable gun for personal protection. And we make that gun. It's not the nicest fit and finish or anything like that, but it's $200 and it works. And that's important. So that's the G2C. That's one of the best sellers. The ones that I really like the one that we just dropped earlier this year, the GX4 Carry, which is one of the guns that we'll have at the Taurus Handgun Experience, this event that this is my baby, this event. And the idea
Nice. Okay.
is to get people to shoot Taurus who maybe haven't experienced these guns before, haven't experienced the products, and to be like, oh, well, you had this opinion of Taurus before, but that was based on guns that were made when you were in grade school. Now, this is what Taurus is all about. So the GX4 Carry, it's a 15+1. It's in that weird, I don't know what to call the segment. It's like macro compact, right? Like it's a big micro compact, like the P365 XL, the Glock 48, like along that size
Okay.
of
Hmm.
gun. So we've got that just came out this year. We have it in as an optics ready. If you're ever looking at our guns and it says Toro after them, Toro, that stands for Taurus Optics Ready Options. So that's all of our red dot ready guns. One of the neat things that we do on the GX4 series, because we have it as the 15 round. Then we have an 11 round micro compact with a really short barrel. And then we have one that has the same short grip, but a longer barrel and slide. But one of the cool things we do on that line is instead of using an optics plate or an adapter or something like that, we just cut all of the slides for the RMSC footprint because we looked at the data and the number one selling micro compact footprint is the Shield RMSC footprint. So why waste your time with all these other crazy footprints? Cut it for the one that the most people buy, because in that range you have every price too. You have the primary arms micro MRDS, which is $120, all the way up to the actual Shield optics, which are my choice for that, which are $300-$400. And because we use a direct mount to the slide system, because there's no adapter, it's much less likely to lose zero. It's more durable. There's no plates or anything to get loose and shift your zero and stuff like that. And that's a feature that it doesn't cost us any extra to build that into the gun because we're tremendously vertically integrated. So it's little things like that I point to when I talk about the culture shift at Taurus, right? Old Taurus never would have done that. New Taurus goes, wait a minute, what optics do people buy? And what's the best way to mount an optic to a slide? Direct mount.
Interesting.
Let's see, other cool guns. So the GX4 series, GX4 Carry, GX4 XL, and then the standard GX4 are kind of like our flagship concealed carry products that we've launched recently. We have the G3 series, as I've mentioned. So you have the G3 Compact, which is, a 12 shot. I have one like in my back there. I should grab it. I think it's a 12 shot that's available, iron sights, optics ready. And then our full size G3 is like, it's a Glock 19-ish sized gun, so it's your medium full size gun, 4-inch barrel, all of that stuff. And that one's routinely available on the open I was just on a retailer's website and they had a blowout sale for those for $260. And I'm like, You can get a 15+1 9mm that runs for $250. Okay. Yeah. Sign me up. And that's been
cool. Yeah.
And one of the things historically as a brand that we've been afraid of is we've been afraid of that price conversation where, is my gun cheaper than a P320? Yes. Does it perform exactly the same as a P320? Also, yes. Why is it cheaper? Because we're tremendously vertically integrated. So we control so much of our own small components manufacturing that I don't have to outsource as many things as some of the other manufacturers do, which help keeps my costs down. And then we do other, smart things, in my opinion, like the G3 series. It uses Glock sight dovetails. Why reinvent the wheel? Why put my own Taurus only dovetail when I can just put an existing one on there? And then if somebody wants to get new sights, Glock sights are really easy to find. Just go get those. But, a big thing with the price conversation is affordable doesn't mean cheap. And that's a hill that we have to overcome, that I'm continually working on, is that just because this gun is $250-$350 doesn't mean it's cheap. It just means it costs less for us to make it, which means you guys get to save money on it. Other concealed carry products, the ones that I really I would unquestionably recommend for someone looking for a carry gun, the G3 Compact, G3C, or the GX4 Carry. Those would probably be my two go-tos. It's not that I don't like the regular GX4. I just don't like micro compacts. It's so small. It's a 9mm that's smaller than my hand, and they're hard to shoot. They're uncomfortable. And I think that when you get into that micro compact form factor, you're better off going with a revolver for a number of reasons. But we also have a tremendously robust revolver line. Our best seller is the 856. It's available in 2-inch, 3-inch versions. It's available optics ready. That was something we did last year. Was we launched the first ever optics ready revolvers for concealed carry. So you take your regular, I think I have one within arm's reach, actually. I do. You take your regular revolver, and then the top strap, the part up here, if you're listening to the audio version, like look at a picture of a revolver. You take the top strap, and that's drilled and tapped for our optics mount, which then mounts directly to the frame of the revolver. The optic goes to that. And again, it's a Shield RMSC mount. That's actually what I have on this gun, is a Shield RMSC. So we have that in 6-shot 38, 5-shot 357 Magnum, and then just this year, 6-shot 327 Federal Magnum, which was another pet project of mine because I'm a huge advocate of 32s. And
Okay.
you should ask Chuck Haggard about 32s when you had him on. He would have gone on for hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mentioned this to you before the episode, but Chuck came on and kind of laughed and he was like, yeah, pepper spray and revolvers. That's what I'm known for, but there's more to me. So we actually didn't talk about revolvers too much. And that's why I'm particularly excited today to get your perspective on that. So firstly, thank you for explaining some good recommendations for Taurus concealed carry guns. Those will be exciting to kind of show on the Reels highlights on Instagram. And whenever I get my hands on them, I'm excited to do a review for those listening once that time comes. But I'd love to kind of take this opportunity to pivot into revolvers. I don't know a lot of people that have a revolver as their concealed carry weapon. So I would love to hear some benefits of having a revolver and maybe even some contraindications of carrying a revolver as opposed to semi-automatic, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually do. So I teach a class called Fundamental Revolver Skills through Citizens Defense Research, which is owned by
Nice.
Melody Lauer. She'll be one of the instructors at the Taurus Handgun Experience as well, along with
So
me.
excited.
Um, the whole revolver thing. So it started. I started carrying a revolver because I was shooting revolvers. I shot in 2011. I shot the inaugural IDPA World Championship, and I was shooting a Springfield XDM 525 competition, one of the early ones that they got out. And throughout the entire match, I kept outrunning my headlights. I would shoot,
Mm.
and I wouldn't really be paying attention to everything that was going on because I was trying to shoot fast. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, Ricky Bobby, this is actually before that movie came out, so that's a weird reference. But I need to pump the brakes. How can I don't like the phrase slow down and get your hits or anything like that. But what I needed to do was figure out a way to force myself to be present in the moment of the shot I was taking and not thinking about the next shot, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
at the time, the rules of IDPA were such that if you were shooting the revolver division, you basically couldn't miss. If you had to take a makeup shot, you're basically screwed for the
Mm.
entire match. And they haven't changed that much. Now you can get a couple makeups here or there, but so I started shooting revolver, and I had always liked revolvers. There's pictures of me from way before I ever started shooting matches where I'm shooting wheel guns and stuff like that. I've always appreciated them as mechanical objects. I like to shoot them. I like the aesthetics, the whole vibe. It's definitely a thing. But so I started shooting them in matches, and I discovered that it made me present. It got me into the moment where I was focusing on the shot I was taking. And then I was like, oh, I really like doing this. So I'm having fun doing it. So I kept doing it. And I then realized that I was far more likely to train with a revolver. So I might as well just carry it because I'm getting all these reps in with a double action trigger and all of that. Let's just carry one of these guns. And then I started actually, I started working at a gun shop, and like a regular public facing gun store, and I started to that was kind of the straw that broke me from the what's the nice way of saying it. A lot of times in the industry, in the firearms industry, and especially in the training side, we tend to start huffing our own farts, and we think that if you're not carrying a Glock 19 with a weapon mounted light and a dot and a reload, and you're not, at carrying from the appendix position and doing all of
Mm.
these things, then you're not doing self defense right. And it's
Sorry. Yeah.
no, oh,
I've never
the
heard
huffing
that
your own
saying.
farts line.
That's the new one. Sorry.
I,
That was
I,
hilarious.
I'm a very old man. The
No, it's good. I like it. I'll have to start
It's
using
true
that.
though. But
Yeah.
we sort of get wrapped up in this mindset of like,
Yeah.
if you're not practicing self defense the way I am, you're doing it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And working at the gun store was the thing that finally broke me of that, where I realized that I mean, I'd sort of known it for a while, but it's just not true. There
Mm.
are millions and millions of gun owners out there who will never take a class, but they have the same right to self-defense that you and I have. And that
Hmm.
was when I then started thinking about what's actually a good gun for these people. And I landed on revolvers for a number of reasons. So I did this video years ago called Are Revolvers Relevant? And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. I did this video on YouTube and it's still out there. And the fundamental idea behind this is this thing that I call the revolver utility curve. So if you make a graph, and the horizontal axis of this graph is a shooter's skill, and the vertical axis of this graph is the usefulness of the revolver. The revolver makes a U shape where when you are extremely unskilled, like zero skill whatsoever, the revolver has an incredibly high utility. And then as you get skilled, the utility of the revolver goes down and down and down until it gets to the bottom where you're a pretty good shooter, you're pretty well trained, you're competing, you're doing all of that, and you look at the revolver and you go, this doesn't make any sense. And then as you get more skilled and you get into more and more like task specialization and things like that, the revolver gains utility back. So for example, why is a revolver extremely useful for someone who's never going to take a class? So at the bare end of the use of the skill spectrum, this is person, it's the middle of COVID, the world's not good. I don't like the way things are going. I'm walking into a gun store. They're sold out of Glocks and everything else, but I want a gun to protect my house. There's a $350 Taurus sitting in the shelf. Okay, I'll take that. How does this gun then become useful for that person? It's useful for two very important reasons. Because again, we have to understand that this person is never going to take a class. Like maybe they're going to take a
Right.
state mandated class or something like that. But these people exist. They're out there, and I want them to be able to have, if they're going to get a gun, which in many cases I would actually tell this person if they asked me, I'd be like, hey, don't buy a gun. This isn't the best choice for you. But they
Mm-hmm.
do. So the reason a revolver makes sense for them is it is very easy for me. Is two things. With this gun, it is very easy for me to visually verify whether or not it's loaded. If you're watching the video feed of this, you can actually see light through the back of the cylinder. You can tell without even
Mm-hmm.
opening the gun that it's not loaded. If you want to take one more step, the cylinder pops open, and I'm like, if there's empty holes, it's not loaded. If the holes have things in them, it's probably loaded. So it's incredibly visually easy to verify that it's not loaded. The other reason that these are very, very useful for people at that skill level is because it is difficult to negligently discharge. You and I both know that my finger should be placed right here alongside the frame of the gun, or even higher if possible, nowhere on the trigger. When someone who has never taken a class hears a thing go bump in the night and they reach into their sock drawer to grab this gun, where's their finger going? It goes on the trigger. There is nothing you
Absolutely.
and I or Chuck Haggard or any of our friends can do about that. When people
Hmm.
pick these guns up, they are putting their finger on the trigger. And if they're
Yes.
doing that with a striker fired pistol that's got a 3.5 pound trigger on it, their odds of a negligent discharge just went up tremendously. If they are
Mm.
doing it with a double action revolver that has an 8, 9, 10 pound trigger, their odds of a negligent discharge still went up because they're touching the trigger, but it takes a lot more work to get through that. So, and
Interesting.
these are uncomfortable talking points for a lot of people in the
Sure.
professional community to have, but they're
Yeah.
real. This
Right.
is a real use case. This is, if you've ever read, I forget what they used to call it, but in American Rifleman, they used to have NRA used to have a column of like home defense, of like, justified self-defense shootings, and many of them were home defense shootings, and many of them involved 38 special revolvers because people would pick these up and they would hear a noise and they would be like an intruder, and then they would just stick it at them and rip the trigger 6 times or 5 times or however many bullets the gun holds. So there is that use case again for these people. And do I want all of these people to go get training and take a class from me and take a class from, Matt and Chuck and you and everybody else and Craig and all of the people that are out there? Yes, I do. But they're not gonna.
Mm.
But they still have a right to defend themselves. So we have to work within those real world parameters. And I'm genuinely convinced that the simplicity of the revolver outweighs the drawbacks, because there are drawbacks. Triggers are heavy, sights are frequently bad. So yeah, there are drawbacks to that. And you start to see those drawbacks as you get better at shooting. Because if I take this revolver and I go try to take, any sort of basic concealed carry class, I'm immediately going to feel like I'm behind the power curve to somebody who's got a Glock 19 or a Taurus G3 or whatever, because they're going to be able to shoot faster. Their trigger's going to be lighter. They don't have to reload as frequently. So when I start my training journey, pretty soon, this thing doesn't look very attractive because it's hard to shoot and the sights suck and the trigger's heavy and it doesn't hold any bullets. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to get, a 9mm striker fired, hammer fired semi-automatic pistol. And that's kind of where a lot of people stop their journey, is they get there and they go, okay, well, I've got a Taurus 92 and I've got a G3C for concealed carry. I'm set. And they are. Good for you. God bless. Go with God, get your training, do what you got to do. What ends up happening to a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, what ends up happening to some people is they start looking at different carrying scenarios, right? When you break yourself out of that mindset that everyone should be carrying a double stack 9mm at the appendix position with a weapon mounted light and an optic, and you accept that there are different ways to carry guns in the real world, all of a sudden revolvers start making more sense again. For example, I spend a lot of time in a car. When I am in the car, I ankle carry a lot because it is a fantastically easy way to get at my gun without and be completely surreptitious about it. I can draw from the ankle carry position, and if you are looking in my car from outside, you have no idea that I am accessing a concealed firearm because there's no movement of my, like, even sitting down, my body, my lower half of my body is cropped out, right? But if I go to move my shirt to get an appendix carry gun, you're going to see that movement. But in this video frame, I could have my arm under the table, access a concealed carry firearm in an ankle, and then have that in hand. And we all know that a gun in hand is the fastest possible draw. So when you start to get into niche scenarios like that, like the ankle carry scenario, pocket carry, lots of people pocket carry guns, loads and loads of people out there in the world pocket carrying guns. And it is there's advantages to pocket carry where if I'm, it doesn't get that cold here in South Carolina. I think I have to wear a jacket like 4 or 5 times a year. But if I'm wearing a thicker jacket and I have my gun in a pocket carry holster in the outer layer of that jacket, I can still have my AIWB carried, 9mm, but I now have my hand on a gun at the immediate ready position with, a 0.6 draw if I'm really ripping at it, right? So you get into these niche environments, you get into these things where it starts to make a lot more sense. And, one of the other advantages of the revolver is concealment. And when I'm talking about concealment, I'm talking about angles, all right? If you look at the human body, even if I hold my elbow up like this, there are no actual right angles on the human body, right? This is rounded off. My elbow is rounded off. If you bend your knee, it's rounded off. There aren't any actual hard 45, hard 90-degree angles on the human body like there are on guns. Revolvers have fewer hard angles on them. They tend to have a more rounded shape, which helps break up their outlines easier, especially if you're trying to deep conceal or carry a gun in an environment maybe where you're maybe not supposed to have a gun. I'm not saying break the law, but ignore, a perfectly legal example. In some states, no guns allowed signs don't have the force of law, and it's just the owner of the business saying, I don't want guns in here, right?
Right.
You can walk right past those signs, but there could be consequences. They could kick you out, and now you don't get to go to Chipotle anymore, and everybody loves burritos, right? So concealment is a real-world concern, and revolvers tend to conceal a little bit better than semi-automatics in the same size frame. I'll never be able to conceal even a Glock 43 or a GX4 as easily as I can conceal a small frame revolver, because the weight's a factor too, right? I have an alloy framed revolver, even fully loaded, is going to be lighter than the lightest polymer frame striker fired 9mm handgun when it's fully loaded.
Wow. Yeah. So
I know
many good points to this. Oh my gosh, it is, but in the best way.
I actually teach a class. So last year at NRA annual meetings, I did a seminar on this called Revolver Pros and Cons. and it's a 2-hour seminar. Like, and I will
Wow.
sometimes host it on Zoom, and people can, pay to see it, because there's also a whole con section. Like, these things have no ammunition in them whatsoever. So
Right.
if uh, you are if you shoot USPSA, a lot of people will like dump their spare magazine when it has 6 rounds in it, and that's my
Right.
starting condition is six
Right.
rounds. So
Yes.
like, I'm out of bullets when the gun comes out of the holster, and then when I have
Yes.
to reload it, I'm really, really out of bullets.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. All I can think about are those scenes from Hollywood films where the cop is trying to reload as the assailant is running at them, and they
Mm.
have the revolver and they're panicking and they drop the bullets, and that's what I think of when I think of
The
the lack
best one
of
of those is
bullets.
the end of LA Confidential. If you guys haven't seen
Yeah.
it, there's a tremendous gunfight in the end of that movie, and the main character, one of the two main characters, is trying to reload his snub nose revolver with like loose
Mhm.
rounds, and he's been winged in the arm, and it's just, I'm like, that looks like it sucks. That's why we use speed
Right.
loaders, for the record.
Right. Yes, good. No, I'm glad you brought that up. And I am curious, so in your everyday life, do you carry a semi-automatic or do you carry a revolver?
99% of the time I carry a revolver.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
there's I'll carry a semi-auto if I know I'm going to be teaching a class or something. So like, with
Hmm.
the Taurus handgun experience coming up, I've been, going back to my autos and trying to work with those a little bit. And one of the things that, that I will tell people, if you can get good at shooting a double action revolver, you're automatically good at shooting everything else. Like, the fundamental, so the trigger pull on this gun, this is my Taurus 82 that's got 10,000 something rounds on it. The trigger pull on this gun is about 8.5 pounds, right? It's a really good, nice, smooth trigger pull. If I, ooh, wait a minute, I have a safety product for that around here somewhere. Crap, what did I do with those? Little bit ADD.
No,
A
go for
friend of
it. This
mine
is a good,
a friend
yeah.
of mine said the firearms industry runs on a combination of ADD and autism. And I was like, you're not
Yeah, that's
wrong.
fair. That's
So
hilarious.
I
Yeah.
I just got these. These are called dry fire discs. They're from Zeta
Oh,
6. So what it
nice.
allows me to do is, because if I'm using a revolver to demonstrate or to teach, it blocks the cylinder from having any sort of live rounds inserted in it. But I can
Nice.
still close
Okay.
the gun up. I can still dry fire. I can still do all the manipulations that I would need to do. But now,
Very
back to
cool.
that easily verifiable. If you're looking at this, you can go, oh, there's a bright yellow disc in there that's clearly not
Yes.
ammunition.
Right.
So,
Nice.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, no, they're super useful. The guy Michael at Zeta just sent these to me, and I'm like, this is great. I'm using these in all my classes.
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
but the what was I saying? Revolvers, something about shooting. Oh, yeah, no, I carry a revolver 99% of the time, and there's a certain
Okay.
calculus to it. In that one, since I'm not involved in the illegal drug trade, the odds of me getting into a running gunfight where I need more than the capacity of my revolver are extremely low. The other thing about it is that, I'm far more likely to train with them. I shoot revolvers at a high level, so if I'm taking my full size match revolver to the range with me, it shoots the same ammo as my carry gun. So I'll throw my carry gun. So I'll have my carry gun on me when I drive to the range. I'll get to the range. I'll work some reps with my carry gun and my carry ammo. Work a few more reps with practice ammo out of my carry gun, and then I'll put that in my bag, put on my gear, and then shoot my my match revolver and do whatever it is I went to the range to do. Yeah, so I one of the things that I'm a big believer of is, if you like a gun and you enjoy shooting it and you want to take it to the range and train with it, carry that. If that's
Yeah.
1911s, and with the caveat, it has to be reliable, right? If you like
Right.
something weird that doesn't work, don't carry that.
Right.
You would be surprised how
Yeah.
many people are like, no, 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 I promise you, old Betsy's the most reliable thing ever. And I'm like, uh-huh,
Right.
get through a whole mag. But no, like, if you like something, yeah, and you're going to shoot with it and train with it and it's viable, then carry that. We get, again, I'm,
Yeah.
I used to be that guy who was like, you have to carry a modern striker fired or, hammer fired double stack 9 mil. And anymore, I'm like, carry whatever makes you happy. as long as it's reliable and as long as you're training with it, so I
Yeah.
really don't care anymore. And I'm like, I'm not in the business of trying to create little clones of Caleb that do everything that I do. And I have a little clone. He's 4. He runs around and follows me everywhere. So I got one of
Nice.
those.
Right, right.
Um, but
That's
no,
awesome.
yeah, I think I really just want people to practice. Is what I want people to
Yeah.
do.
Are you in search of top-notch gear that exceeds your expectations? Look no further than GPS, brought to you by Go Outdoors Incorporated. GPS has been dedicated to crafting the finest products for hunting and shooting since 2002. As someone who frequents the gun range, my GPS bag is a staple to safely and effectively haul my gear. Their specialized bags are designed to keep all of my valuable equipment secure and organized. With GPS, you can experience the ultimate peace of mind. There are 3 exciting product lines: GPS Tactical, GPS Wild About Hunting, and GPS Wild About Shooting provide the perfect solution for your specific needs. So whether you're on a hunting expedition or hitting the range, GPS is your reliable companion. To choose a bag that fits your needs, use code SheetShield at checkout to save and to support the pod. That's SHESHIELD at checkout. Absolutely. Yeah, and there are a few directions I want to go from here that I'm curious about. First, I'm just going to say them so I don't forget. So, firstly, I would love to know if the holster options out there and like the carrying methods are limited with revolvers. Genuine question, not trying to accuse
Excellent
revolvers.
question.
Very curious. And then I want to make sure we also, well, actually, I'll hold off on that. But yeah, tell me
Okay.
what's out there.
There's everything under the sun. Again, right
Okay.
off camera, I have a drawer that is full of holsters. So if there's
Nice.
a holster that is available for a modern semi-automatic pistol, there is a holster that is also available for a revolver. The hardest
Okay.
thing recently was getting holsters built for our optics ready revolvers, because since no one had done that before, we had to come up with a new way to do that. And both Filster and Galco made some really cool options. But yeah, if you want a holster for a revolver, Filster's got the City Special. Dark Star Gear has the Apollo. If you want leather, and you don't want to break the bank, you've got Galco out there. You've got Milt Sparks making the high end stuff. What's interesting is there is more really nice high end leather holsters available for revolvers, because there's sort of that cachet, that idea that like
Mm-hmm.
it's a classic gun I want to carry in a classic holster. So if you want like a really nice high-end revolver holster, there's a lot of really good options out there. And again, everything from appendix carry to, traditional IWB behind the hip to OWB. And then with revolvers, we have a lot more options in what I consider unconventional carry locations, like ankle carry, pocket carry, stuff like that. So you get a lot. There's a tremendous variety of options out there for revolver carry.
Well, very cool. Thank you so much for the perspective of revolvers in the modern world. Definitely something that I am new to. I think the first gun I ever shot was a revolver, and it makes sense why.
A lot of people, there's a lot of
Thinking
people
back.
who the very first gun they shot was, a 38 special revolver at a gun store. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I struggle with, and I talk about this in classes and that sort of stuff, is you still have those guys who are like, oh, here, little lady, here's your J frame. And
Yes.
I'm actually not a fan of that, specifically because your small frame lightweight revolvers have a bunch more penalties that come with them, right? So they already have a difficult to manage trigger. They already have difficult to see sights. Now you're adding in unpleasant recoil and muzzle blast to this equation, so that the person who's got this gun, if they do go shoot it, they're actually going to be less likely to go train with it, because it's so unpleasant to shoot. That's why when I have
Yes.
these conversations, when people are like, well, I want to get a revolver for home defense, what should I get? And I'm like, you should get a medium frame 38 special or 357 Magnum. Don't shoot 357s, just shoot 38s. But you want a full
Okay.
size gun, because I'll tell you, you take this gun, you put 38s in it, you shoot it, and you're like, this is fun to shoot. It's nice. It's
Mm,
pleasant. But you do
right.
that same thing with an ultralight. I have Friggin' like if you do that with like an LCR or one of our ultralight guns in 357 Magnum, you're gonna have a bad time. Even with like 38 Special plus P, it's just not gonna be a fun experience. And so when I have these advocacy conversations for this platform, there are things that I need to, asterisks on there and be like, hey, but also this is not a blanket statement because certain segments of this are actually bad juju and they will make people
Mm.
not just diss it, because if my end state is I want people to be trained, I don't want their starting gun to be something that will dissuade them from training. And unobtainium framed small frame revolver that shooting a high pressure cartridge will do that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, that was my next topic I wanted to go over, whether or not you recommend revolvers for home defense. I know you talked about the lower likelihood of negligent
Mhm.
discharge, but as far as the it wouldn't be magazine capacity. What would it be called? Chamber capacity? Is that the correct term?
Cylinder capacity.
Cylinder.
Mhm.
Cylinder capacity. Okay, thank you. I'm showing how much I know about revolvers right now.
You can just say how many
As
bullets go in gun. That works too.
How many bullet go in gun? Okay, cool. Just
Exactly.
keep it all together. Exactly. So as far as that aspect, is that a downside to having a revolver as your home defense weapon?
Well, I think home defense is such a complex topic that
Yes.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually have this is the gun that you should have for home defense answer, because the gun that you have for home defense depends on your home. It depends on the
Right.
scenario. It depends on the layout. It depends on, do you live in the city? Do you live in, the country? For example, right now my home defense gun is one of these. It's a 38 Special revolver. It holds 6 shots. I keep it in one of those Hornady quick access safes on my nightstand because I have a small child in my house. Right next to said home defense gun is a 1200 lumen Surefire, or is Surefire or the frick? There's a super bright flashlight. I forget which brand it is. But the thing that's coming out of that drawer first is the light,
Mm-hmm.
because I live in a nice neighborhood in a nice part of town. My primary concern, if I hear something that goes bump in the night, is not shooting the kid who is at the house that he thought is where the party is. I had that. I had that happen. It was 4th of July, and these two girls rang my doorbell at like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I have cameras, and I'm looking at them on the camera, and I just turn on the audio feed and I go, "Hi, I think you're in the wrong place." And they're like, "Oh my God, this is the wrong address." I'm like, "Yes, you need to go home
Right.
or not here." So
Right. Yeah.
so for me, my primary concern is positive threat ID. My secondary concern is shooting whatever thing that is actually a threat. And then I have other tertiary concerns, like I need to be able to take my child and transport them from their room to a safe room and something like that. And again, when we talk about managing these guns in the real world, the reason why I've stayed with the revolver is that if I need to tuck this gun under my armpit and hold my flashlight and hold my kid with the other hand, if I drop this gun, if somehow, arms and limbs and things are flailing about, this trigger catching on something is much less likely to make a loud noise. So my primary concern is that I may need to have a flashlight in one hand, a child in the other hand, and move somewhere. And I need to make sure that if something happens to my gun en route between those places, that that it's not gonna make an inadvertent loud noise. And I am not a huge advocate of weapon mounted lights for situations like that, because there are really good techniques for using a weapon mounted light to search that don't involve pointing the gun at something. But also, most of the time when people are searching with weapon mounted lights, they're just pointing their gun at the thing. So, and I would like to avoid that, because, again, my particular use case is not that. I'm not worried about a violent break in, I'm worried about a lost drunk. When I lived in South Florida, I lived in a motel that had been converted into apartments in a bad part of town, and I had a Beretta 1301 with flight control buckshot and a weapon mounted light on it, because I was worried about people kicking in my front door to rob me. So
Okay.
when you talk about home defense, and I know this is like a huge tangent, but this is
No, I'm loving this.
there's so many variables in what
Mm-hmm.
a home defense scenario could look like. Like I have a lever action 30-30 that I keep not loaded. There's no round in the chamber. I just have the magazine full. And that's because I've seen a huge urban coyote on my security cameras every now and then. And if I see that thing in my
Mm-hmm.
yard, I'm going to blast it, but I'll have
Right.
the time to get my rifle and actually take and use it appropriately for something like that. So I just saw it on the cameras last night. And I was like, the freaking coyote's back.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh
you
man,
know,
I
it's
would be freaked out. So yeah, I wouldn't blame you. Especially with a
um,
kid running around, I wouldn't
oh
want
yeah.
that.
But no,
Yeah.
it's so in terms of like what do I recommend for home defense? I think that in general, if you're not going to take a nuanced approach to home defense, then a revolver is just as good as anything else. But the vast majority of civilian self-defense shootings are home defense shootings, or home invasions, or something like that. The number
Mm-hmm.
two are shootings around cars because people
Mm-hmm.
get into road rage incidents and then instead of driving, they get out of their car and that turns into a gunfight. Terrible idea. Don't
Yeah.
stop your car. I have a whole rant about that too, if the preponderance of civilian self-defense shootings are in home invasions and stuff like that, any gun that's reliable and accurate and fires a reasonably appropriate round is going to be appropriate if you're not going to take a nuanced approach for it. But
Mm-hmm.
I strongly encourage people to take a nuanced approach for it. Do you know what the longest possible shot you could take in your house is? What's the distance from your bedroom to the front door? What are the sight lines? If you have to walk out your bedroom, do you need to clear a blind spot before you can proceed towards the noise? Where are your children if you have them? Do you have a point to retreat to? We share a backyard. Our neighbors who we love, we share a backyard with them, and I'm like, if I see, if we're out in the yard and I see this urban coyote making a run for one of my neighbor's daughters, how far a shot is that? Can I make that shot under pressure, that kind of stuff. So these are all really important things for people to take into account. And it's the same idea as walking a stage beforehand, right? I've done
Mm-hmm.
stage walks in my house. I know the corners that I need to cut. I know if I have to go direct to threat, what the safest route for that is. And I'm not doing that because I'm like doing some Rambo fantasy. I also know what
Right.
directions to run if there's a fucking fire.
Right.
So, these are
Yeah.
it's funny. I was just listening to the episode you had with Mike Hughes, and he was talking about preparedness and stuff like that. And I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
live in the woods ever under any
Okay.
circumstances. But
Really?
I'm a big believer in real world, in not real world, because I don't want to make light of what he's preparing for. But I'm a big believer
Right.
in preparing for things that are likely, right? Like
Right.
fires, power outages, stuff like that. And you see
Yeah.
all of these like faux internet warlords who are like, oh, well, when the breakdown of social order, I'm like, in the breakdown of social order, you're going to die because you're autistic shut-in who doesn't know anybody. Make friends with your neighbors, right?
That's
Like if
fair.
something
Yeah.
bad, like our neighbor's water blew out the other day. We're friends. So it's not like, I was like, yeah, if you need to use our bathroom or something like that, come on over. That that's going to do you way more good than stockpiling MREs and emergency blankets. Be friendly with people. Have community. Don't be some spurg
Absolutely.
lord sitting in your basement posting about the boogaloo. Which
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and all of
Yeah.
that's fun and everything. And again,
Right.
that's kind of the big tangent on the home defense thing. Is the best thing you can do for home defense is to have a sense of community. Know the people that
Yeah.
live in your neighborhood. I know that if I
Mm-hmm.
was gone on a work trip and the neighbors saw something weird on my house, that I would get a phone call right away. So it's if you want
Yeah.
to
That's
defend
nice.
if you want to defend your house and your home and your family, it helps to have friends.
100%. And the timing is so funny. This happens a lot on She Shield. It's like divine timing. I got a text from my neighbor the other day, and she was like, "Hey, so just so you know, that huge ass trailer that's been parked in front of your house, that's not ours." And I was like, "Whoa, what? Like, I thought that was yours." And we love them. One of them is, I think, a law student. The other one I think is a med student. I can't remember.
Oh wow,
They're
big brains.
so kind. Yes, big brains, so kind. Just sometimes sit out on their porch like an old couple, and we get to talk to them and really like them. And they sent us a text saying like that trailer is not ours. And now I'm like up in my office, and I watch when that guy gets home. I've like filmed him park his trailer and then walk over to his house that's not near the trailer. And I'm texting her going, hey, I have him on video now just in case you need it. And she's like, okay, good to know. We're going to go over there and talk to him. And they don't know what I do very much. Not that I'm like an assassin, but I'm probably a good neighbor to have, I think.
I
And
would agree with that. Yeah.
right. And I told them, I told her, like, let me know if you need anything. And I typed out this thing, like, I was going to send it and I just couldn't decide. I wanted to say, like, hey, don't go over there alone as a female, but if you do, let me know, I'll go with you, kind of thing. But yeah, like, I watch for that because I'm up here a lot. I work from home, and I know if I saw her like walking over there to talk to him, I'd just go and be like, hey girl, what's up? Let's walk together. So I totally agree. I love the idea of talking to your neighbors, talking to the people. If you plan to bug out, like talking to the people at that location. And you brought up a really good point. Someone I love for, she calls it practical preparedness. I love that term. I don't know if she coined it or anything, but that's kind of her bio
Hmm.
uh, topic, like next to her name. And it's Des at Mother Prepper. We had her on the podcast, and she talks about how a natural disaster and or financial downfall, if you were to have someone in your house lose a job, how that's what you should be prepping for. And then of course, if social unrest happens, you may also have, the gear for that. But she has a very realistic approach to prepping. But she talked about that in the episode. We talked about this on FaceTime a little bit, how important it is to just communicate with your neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up today, and the nuances of home defense, because it's so true. Yeah.
So many people think that home defense is, get a gun, shoot at noises in the dark, and that's obviously, not what it is. That's how you end up shooting your spouse or your kid's boyfriend or, something like that. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of, and Chuck and I have actually talked about this at length. Chuck says the number one best way to avoid being the victim of a home invasion is don't be involved in the illegal drug trade. So that's pro tip right there. Highly professional tip. Don't get involved in the illegal drug
Check.
trade. Um,
Amazing.
but in all seriousness, there's a lot of other things that people do. Like, let's say, I work from home. And I am constantly harping on the nanny about this, but I'm like, lock the goddamn doors even when we're here,
Yes.
okay? Because a lot of times home invasions are targets of opportunity where people are going around during the day when decent folk are at work and they're just opening doors. Lock your doors. I
Yeah.
don't want to hear the nanny scream, oh my God, there's someone in the house while I'm in here on a conference call or something like that.
Right.
So little things, lock your doors, get better kick plates for your doors. Don't leave windows open at night.
Mm.
That famous serial killer in California from the 1960s, I forget the name of him, but he was one that was famous at the time, gained access to a
Yeah.
bunch of his victims' houses because it was hot and they left their windows open at night. And it was before widespread use of air conditioning.
Oh man,
All
who
right. So
was
like,
that?
hey, you have AC, lock your windows at night, keep them closed, things like that. So home defense is
Yes.
one of those topics that it's much, much more nuanced than people think. And people often miss a lot of the easy, like the easy things that they can do, like having cameras
Hmm.
and lights. Lights are a big thing. I am a huge advocate, not just of flashlights for personal protection, but lights on your house. I have floodlights that light up my front yard and my driveway that I turn on when I go to sleep.
Yes.
And they don't point at the neighbors, so it's not an issue, but there are volumes and volumes of studies that indicate that people who are skulking around doing bad guy shit don't want to be illuminated. They don't want to be in the
Hmm.
light because they feel like they're seen. And if you are merely a target of opportunity, bright lights are a deterrent, right? I'm not
I
saying
love that.
just get some floodlights, but it's part of,
Right.
you have to think about the nuanced way to think about home defense is to think about an integrated defense plan, right? You have, just like a military base has layers of protection for whatever asset it is that they're trying to protect, you should have layers of protection for your house. You can have lights, cameras, good locks on your doors, actually locking the doors. You can have
Yes.
intrusion detection systems that create audible noises when the door or the window is breached. Then you can look at hardening a safe room, guns, all that other stuff. So it's not just here's my solution. You should really try to think about it as an integrated plan. And again, this is a topic that I am super passionate about, and I could like talk about this for hours and have in the
I
past.
actually I would love for you to continue on it. Chuck and I were getting to that, and we decided we'd go into a part two, because, as he said, it was his bedtime at that point. So
But luckily,
we're
it's not my
going to have
bedtime for
a
quite a few hours. So
okay, perfect. Yes, and he mentioned firstly, and actually, yesterday, my husband bought some for our doors, but I don't know if I should share that. Well, actually, yeah, it's fine because they'll be in by the time this airs. But we got longer screws
yep.
for our door jamb.
For
Is that what it's
your
called?
yeah, for
The
the kick
hinge?
plate on your
Yes,
so
kick plate.
yep, the kick plate on your door, you get longer screws because most of the screws are, crappy, like, 3/4 of an inch long screws that don't
Mm-hmm.
actually, they thread into the trim, and they don't actually
Right.
thread into the studs that hold the door in place. And if you get the long ones
Yes.
that go into the studs, that's a lot harder to kick down.
Right. Yes, and I walked up to him after Chuck and I got off the episode, and I was like, "Babe, we need to go to Lowe's." And he was like, "Oh no, we have to go to Lowe's? That sucks. Let's go." So
He's like,
we got some.
damn.
Damn. Yep. Exactly. So we also got a new like doorknob because we're gonna change our locks. We recently moved into our house, and that's something that we haven't done yet. So we're gonna do that. Anyway, and then my mom also has these huge door uh stoppers. They like she literally had someone come and professionally drill them into her door so that if someone tried to kick her door in, it wouldn't happen.
Oh,
She
that's
lives
cool.
alone, so she thinks of stuff like that.
Reasonable.
But yeah, it's industry grade. Like would not be able to kick that door down. And we've had some, my sister had an ex-boyfriend that was trying to break into our house at one point, and my mom went crazy, and like not crazy, a good crazy, and
Right.
got a home security system, put that on all of the doors, put window breaker sensors on, um, and like the police respond to our neighborhood pretty quickly. Although I don't know, have you ever heard a raccoon scream?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds like a
It
person.
sounds like a person. And when I was in junior high, not to deviate too far, because I still want to hear more thoughts on your home defense plan. But when I was in junior high, I think my oldest sister, 5 years older than me, was watching me, and this is when we did not get along. We're besties now, but we did not get along then. And I was back in my room and I heard it outside of my window, and I was horrified because I was afraid that like it could somehow see me, like something was happening. I didn't know if it was like a woman screaming or if it was an animal. I was freaked out.
Right.
So I call her and she's in the den. She's like, "What?" And I'm like, "There is a woman screaming. I don't know what to do. All I have is this bow and arrow. Like, should I go out there?" And she's like, "No, just it's nothing." And I was like, "No, like come here. I swear to God." And she was like, "This better be good." And she like walks back and then it stops. And then she goes back to our living room and it happens again. And I call her again and
That's like a
she's
scene
like,
from a
"You're just
horror
messing with
movie.
me." Oh, it was. I swear. And that's what made me think it could see me because by the time my sister came, it stopped and then it would start again
When it was
when
just
she left.
you.
Yes, I
That
felt insane. And I didn't have the wherewithal to record it on my phone because, nowadays it's like everyone's like with their
mhm.
phone, but then I didn't think to like record it. And I didn't want to also lose access to my phone to call my sister.
Right.
But we called 911 and they never showed up. It was insane. So that's my story of like why you should be your own first responder. But
Yeah. Well,
later on we determined it was raccoon.
and that's something I 100% agree with, because so I live in an area where a good police response time is 5 or 10 minutes, and
Okay.
that's a good police response time just about anywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I know you've done ECQC. I've done ECQC. ECQC, by the way, is how we jump people into the cool kids gang. So, like, if you're
Cool.
serious about self defense and you haven't taken ECQC, I'm a little bit like, all right, whatever. But then once somebody does it, I'm like,
Right.
they're okay.
Yes. That's
So I
hilarious.
have a
Yeah.
confession. I actually
Okay.
commented on one of your Instagram posts so I was scrolling reels and you had a post
Yeah.
where you were doing, this was before you took ECQC, before you started this show, and you were
Uh-huh.
doing some Krav Maga
Oh no.
thing. And my
Yeah.
comment was, hey, you should look into ECQC with Craig Douglas. And then I
Huh.
just kind of left it at that. And then fast forward like a year or so later, I saw you posting from it. I'm like, oh my God, she fucking did it. Okay. Hell
Oh
yeah.
no way.
Yeah.
Oh
So
wait. Okay. I wonder what I said back.
I don't know. I mean, it was years
I
ago.
wonder if I
Now
said
I'm worried that
anything
I might have
back.
actually been mean because I can sometimes come
It's
across really mean, and I'm not. I'm
no
really
worries,
nice.
man.
Um,
I have this thing with comments. I try not to read into the tone. Like I just try to
which is
take
smart.
what they're saying like yes, and that's given me a lot of peace. Um but yeah, no, trust me. I know what mean sounds like. It probably was not mean.
Oh,
I've had people say things like on your way to shoot up a school, like things
oh yeah,
like
I get
that.
that all the time.
That's right? Like that's
N-
mean, but I'm
Not
glad
so
you
much
said that.
not so much as much anymore. But yeah, no. But like, so back to the
Very cool.
response time thing is,
Yeah.
um, so you've done ECQC, I've done ECQC,
Mhm.
I did martial
We are
arts at a high
cool.
level for a long time. A 3 minute round feel like just in like a kickboxing fight, right? A 3 minute round. I'm not at 100% exertion for all 3 minutes of that round. It feels like a year, right? And then the
Yep.
parts of that fight where I'm actually engaged and I'm throwing strikes or I'm countering or I'm moving or something like that, you that was 60 seconds. That felt like 6 months, right? So
Yes.
even with police response times being good, you have to be your own responder because you're it in that time
Mhm.
frame where you are waiting from 911, help, help, there's someone in my house, he's trying to kill me, until the flashing blue lights arrive. That's it.
Mhm.
And I try to not be like all serious about this, but in that moment you have possibly the rest of your life to get it wrong.
Mm.
And that's a big deal. And that's why I struggle a lot, like trying to balance this road of like, I accept that there are people who don't want to train, and I accept that there are people who don't want to be good at these things, but also I want them to. But we
Mm.
also have to live in the real world, right? Like, I have
Right.
time to go to the gym 3 to 5 days a week, take care of my fitness. I work the heavy bag. I should probably spar more, but yeah, again, this is the balance, right? Am I going to go spar and get punched in the mouth to get better at fighting people with my hands, or am I going to go do something I like, shooting? So I do the minimum to keep that skill set at a baseline, but I'm not necessarily
Yes.
working it to the highest level that I probably should. I'm never going to be a jujitsu blue belt. Like, that's not, because I don't care. Um, but at the
Totally
same
fair.
time, I still believe that those skills are value. I still take training and I
Yeah.
still go into environments where I want to work on those. But I do this for a living, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, I'm so fortunate in my job with Taurus that I can say, hey, this training class has value because I'm going to take a bunch of our guns with us and I'm going to let people shoot them, and it's going to be a whole thing. Oh, and also I'm going to go take a class and I'm going to get better at something that, I
Yes.
wasn't good at before. So I have to balance that with the fact that, there's also people out there who have regular, Jake from State Farm works from 8 to 5. He comes home, he's got 2 kids and a wife, and he likes to play basketball. Is it reasonable for me to ask Jake from State Farm to spend an additional 40 hours a month or a quarter or a year, becoming a USPSA B class shooter and getting 3 amateur boxing fights and a jiu-jitsu blue belt? No, it's not. Even if
Right.
I want him to be all of those things, it's not necessarily
Right.
reasonable to ask people to do that. But again, that goes back to the thing I've been beating on, where we get wrapped around an axle about stuff like that a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And as a jiu-jitsu blue belt, I don't go but 1 to 2 times a week
Mm-hmm.
to jiu-jitsu because I'm glad you brought that up. There is a balance to it. My goal is not to compete. I just want to keep my grappling skills intact. And I
Mm-hmm.
also my partner is a godsend. I'm sure you've heard on the podcast episodes, broken my nose about 5 times. I've had 2 reconstructive nose
Oh, geez.
surgeries.
Wow.
Yes, so that happened. So she and I actually wear helmets. And so I have the Redbeard Combatives helmet, and then I have a less crazy one for her. I forget where I got it. It's like, I think it's Century, like one of their
Oh,
shield.
yeah.
So not as crazy as the Craig Douglas helmets, but it does provide a shield so that we can add in some striking. And that makes me feel so much better when she and I can grapple, strike. I even threw on my fanny pack the other day, and I threw on a blue gun.
Oh, that Redbeard Combatives
When I
helmet is dope.
say it again.
Sorry, I've never seen that Redbeard Combatives helmet before, so I just Googled it, and I'm like, that looks
Oh,
pretty rad.
yeah.
I should get one of those.
You definitely should. They have a couple levels of protection. They have one that can take a sim round to the face, and then they have one that the one I have is more like for striking. And it blocks. I'm telling you right now. My friend is like, we stood there before rolling, and I was like, hit me in the face, and she was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And she like tapped me because she's a jiu-jitsuist. She's
Mm-hmm.
never done Muay Thai. She's never done MMA. And I was like, no, like smack me really hard. So we're just sitting there like smacking each other to see how much it can take. And what's funny is later on, I looked at the video and the guys from Muay Thai all like turned around and were like, what the hell?
Like,
Like I
what are
could
these
see them
people
all
do?
like
Why are they hitting
talking.
each other?
Exactly. We just like, it was, yeah. Have you seen those slapping competitions? That's kind of what it looked like. But,
So,
um,
just as like a fun side note, I just got a pitch from the Power Slap. That's the company in the U.S. We're
okay.
looking at possibly sponsoring it as a brand because it
What?
it's
Okay.
there are some things that I'm willing to do for brand exposure, and like Knockout of the Night brought to you by Taurus USA. Yeah, I'm willing to do that. So I'm a
Oh, I
huge
love that.
I'm a huge fan of mixed martial arts. One of the more fun things I've done in my adult life was I took ECQC years ago, and the Saturday night of the class, there also happened to be fights on. So a bunch of the students, we were sitting in
Nice.
the bar with Craig and watching the fights that happened to be on at the time. So that was pretty good. That was a pretty good bucket list
Nice.
experience.
Yeah, for sure, for
But no, I've
sure.
been, one of the great things about mixed martial arts is you can, if you have fought or competed or trained at any level, you can kind of sit down and watch it, and you can
Mhm.
and you can start to understand why things work better
Mhm.
than certain other things, right? And
Yeah.
you can then also look at it and go, okay, that would like closed fist strikes to the face are extremely effective because for a number of reasons. It's because my knuckles are a lot harder than your face in most places. But but then the other thing that you learn then from watching mixed martial arts, and then when you take it out and you apply it to, so like if you're training striking, especially, you have to
Mhm.
have different modalities, right? Like you can't train striking without a heavy bag because a heavy bag is the only thing you can hit with all of your force, right?
Right.
Or you can also hit a person with all of your force, but that's called a fight. And
Right.
that's a different thing. But you need to have a heavy bag, but you also need to have mitts that you can hit so you can work on speed and precision and technique. But I've seen people who have just like practice like kia karate style punches, and then they go hit a heavy bag for the first time and their wrist folds up because they've never actually hit something that had mass to it, right? So you
Right.
have to, and it's just like with shooting, where you have to train to shoot accurately, you have to train to shoot fast, you have to train, and you need sort of different environments to do these things in. So I don't know where I was going with that. I like hitting stuff. I think that's punching is fun. And again,
Punching is fun.
that's the training thing, right? Like I would much rather shoot
Right.
a revolver than a PCC, so I do it because it's fun. I would much rather go work on, a jab cross hook combo on the heavy bag than roll around on the floor. And that's different strokes for different folks. And I will
Right.
fully admit that like the jujitsu guys can fold me into a pretzel. God bless. That's a great skill set.
Totally fair, totally fair. I think it's healthy to recognize where your interests lie, but also recognize where like the reality part is. And
Mhm.
my training partner is a really good example. She agreed to just kind of be my kind of like body bag for me to like test some stuff out on, but she's starting to get curious. She's like, I actually have never hit someone in the face. By the time she went to slap me, it was like a little love tap. She was like, I don't know what I would do in a real world situation. And she kind of acknowledged like she needs to start looking into this, but she's not going to be the next, Muay Thai fighter. She's going to be her, purple belt jiu-jitsu self with some striking on the side. So
Mhm.
I think that's very real of you. And Matt Little on the episode before you, this was a really big discussion on like training philosophy that I enjoy so much. It's one of the reasons I started She Shield, to kind of bring this like lens of reality to, what's shown on social media and what people say is the only way or the extremist way that works for them and stuff. So anyway, I love that you went there. That's so exciting. And speaking of training and people who actually train, um, I would love to hear, because this was something that was brought to my attention when I first got a phone call from Walther about the PDPF, and I sat down with one of the guys from Walther, and he started talking about brands out there that like the marketing team and the even the development team train versus the ones that don't. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, there are like gun companies that like the people who like are part of the process don't actually shoot or don't actually
Most of
train. Like,
them, yeah.
did not know that. So as someone who is part of a company that is pivoting and appreciating that and making it a priority as far as training goes, um, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you, I guess, as someone who is part of like the consumer side to and just exposed to all of these brands, how do you look at a brand and determine if like the thought process behind it is reputable and like these people are actually aware? And what am I trying to say? I'm not asking this very well. I'd love
How
to know
can you
just your
tell? Hang on,
thoughts on
let
that.
me see if I can translate this. How can you
Yeah,
tell if the
please,
company that
God.
you're engaging with is serious about end user driven product development?
Yes, that
Uh,
was very well said.
Thanks, I do this for a living. Um,
Me
so a
too.
big thing that you can look for is look who they, look who they interact with. So we're all going to have marketing content, right? So we're all going to have ads and
Right.
commercials and shit like that. Look at who they choose to engage with. Look at how they're choosing to put their products in people's hands, right? So, and I'm going to caveat this. If anybody out there is listening to this and anything that I'm about to say hurts your feelings, I would suggest that the appropriate response to that is take a really good hard look in the mirror at yourself. Because what I'm about to say is not to me controversial, but if a company primarily engages with flashy influencers and people whose message is more focused on looking cool. And sometimes these people who are focused on looking cool can be very talented shooters. I'm not trying to take that away,
Right.
but if you
Hmm.
look at someone and they are more focused on looking cool and being flashy and kind of being in the cultural zeitgeist, uh, or you can look at companies and are they engaging with instructors, are they engaging with high level competition shooters and trainers and people like that. And Walther's a good example. Walther has done a great job with their pro staff, and like and the people that they've reached out to and the people that they work with. And then look at what they talk about when they do media appearances. And this is not me trying to pat myself on the back or toot my own horn, but
Sure.
we talked about product, and I'll talk about product till I'm blue in the face, but I've spent
Hmm.
more of this talking about home defense and personal protection and philosophies for that, because I want to make products that work for that, and those are the conversations that I want to have. So if you know it, it's hard to get to know a brand's culture if you don't know people in the brand, but they will tell you, one way or the other. One of the big things that we spent a lot of time and money doing last year was sponsoring IDPA events. And I love IDPA.
Nice.
I love IDPA for a number of reasons. One of which is that, and as much as I love USPSA and I've shot that, IDPA is where regular Earth people who want to compete go to compete. If you have a Taurus G3 or a Glock 19 or a SIG 320 and you're like, well, I've taken a CCW class and I've, done like my local instructor, I took his CCW class, then I took their advanced class. I want to do something else. They go shoot IDPA. That's where they go. So my customers are there. And if they can see that Taurus is out there being like, hey, we're giving away free guns to people who come shoot these matches, that's part of the culture. That is very much part of I'm not just supporting the shooting sports, I'm supporting, I'm helping to create an environment that gets more people to come back and to shoot more. Because the cool thing that IDPA does, and I will ride for this for as long as I live, and if they ever change this, I'll probably stop sponsoring matches. But in IDPA, how prizes work, random drawings, right? So if you go to the Arkansas State Championship, which I actually have an email from those guys about sponsoring the match, funny note. So if you go to the Arkansas State Championship and you finish 43rd overall and you're like second sharpshooter and, fifth lady, and you don't win anything, but I donate 5 guns to the match, you have the same chance as everybody else is winning one of those guns. So somebody could go and they could finish, 62nd or something like that, and they win a free gun, and they're like, this is the best freaking day I've ever had. I got a free gun out of this. That person is then more likely to keep competing. They're also more likely to have a positive view of my brand, which is part of why I do it. But they're also more likely to come back and to keep doing it because they're like, I had a great time. I shot some guns. I don't really care how I finished because I won a gun. So uncoupling incentives from performance is beneficial for me as a brand. And I think it's beneficial to keep people involved and keep people having fun. So that's part of the cultural thing. Look for brands that support the shooting sports. Look for brands that support good trainers, and just and things like that, and that's why for us culturally, that's why we do things like bring Chuck Haggard in to teach our sales reps. It's why we brought Matt Little down to teach a class to our engineers. It's why we're having the Taurus handgun experience where, we're bringing in Melody Lauer, who's one of the best instructors that I ever know. She's such a good instructor that I work for her. Like when I teach my classes, my revolver classes and stuff, it's through her company, Citizens Defense Research, which is also nice because it means I don't have to handle enrollments and waivers. I just here, link, click button.
Right.
And then I show up and I'm like, we're shooting now, guys.
That's nice.
We're bringing Melody to teach this Taurus handgun experience, and we're providing guns and ammo to all of these people for it. There are not a lot of brands that are doing stuff like that. The ones that are, and there's certainly, there are other brands that are into it, but the culture is the most important part of that, because if I can be passionate about shooting and passionate about product development and making cool products that I want to shoot, but if my boss isn't buying into it, it's not happening. If the engineers in Brazil aren't buying into it, it's not happening. But it is, and that's what makes it interesting. Is we went from making products like I know I've got a good one. I don't have any of our old shitty products here, and I apologize. I just jumped off camera.
Oh no, that's totally fine.
So all right. So you probably don't even remember the Taurus curve because that was like 10 years ago.
I do not.
So the Taurus curve
was 10 years ago.
So the Taurus curve was the worst fucking thing we ever made. It was a double action only semi-automatic 380 that was in it was a chassis system gun, so we were ahead of the curve on that one. Oh my god, that was a really bad pun. I didn't even mean to do that because the gun was named Curve. So but it was
nice.
It was so
gotcha.
I'm holding my hand straight up and down for people who are listening to this. My hand is now curved. The gun's frame was actually curved so that it would blend to your hip to make it easier to carry, and it had two 50 lumen crappy LED lights in it acting as a weapon mounted light. It was the worst hunk of trash we have ever produced. And I remember I
Okay.
was in a meeting with Taurus of that era at the time, and they like unveiled it and they're like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Wow, that's certainly a thing." I had no idea what to say because I was trying to get him to buy advertising with me at the time, so I didn't want to like shit on him too badly. But
Yeah.
it was just, I mean, so we went from making like really weird gimmicky products like that to making
Oh,
things like
wow.
the
I
605
just looked at a
executive grade.
picture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You looked it up. It's
Oh,
so bad.
wow.
It's terrible.
Damn.
Um, but and so we
It
went from
looks
doing.
like a taser. It looks like
It does. It
taser
doesn't
the
even look
taser
like a
bolt.
gun. Yeah. Yeah. It
No.
doesn't even look like a real gun. So we went from doing stuff like that to doing projects like the executive grade, where this is, an entirely hand built revolver, right? Like this is a one gunsmith gun. So one guy got all of the parts for this gun, hand built it, hand tuned the action, hand assembled it, and then it went in a box. It went to America. It got inspected by our guys in the States, and then it went in a box and it came to me. And so that's the thing is we went from making this really goofy stuff that nobody actually wanted to making things that's really cool that people actually want. But what we did was we kept that same willingness to try new stuff, because talk all the shit you want about the curve, it was terrible, it didn't work, and it was ugly. But that same willingness to try something new and interesting is why we made the optics ready revolvers, right? Because what's the first
Right.
complaint that people have about a small frame revolver? It's either that the trigger's bad or the sights suck. Well, I fixed one of those. You put a red dot on it. There, I fixed your sights. We're done.
Right.
And like the cool thing about the optics ready revolvers too is that I have another one over here. This one I don't have a dry fire disc for because it's a 32. This is a phenomenal dry fire tool because the optic doesn't reciprocate. And just like Mike was talking about with the SIRT pistol, I can get infinite reps with this, and the dot gives me tremendous amount of feedback on what's happening during my trigger pull. Because if I'm watching the dot on this 511 patch on my wall and I rip through that trigger, I'm like, okay, midway through the trigger press, the dot rolled down to the left and then corrected as the shot broke. What would that have done on the target?
Interesting.
So, yeah, the red dot
Love that.
equipped
Yeah.
revolver, it was funny because I was listening to the episode with Mike, and like all of the advantages of the SIRT pistol are also things that you can do with a wheel gun. I can dry fire, I have probably dry fired this 30,000. I couldn't even tell you how many times, but I'll start logging my reps on live fire app now, so you'll know how many times I dry
Perfect.
fire these things.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Very nice plug there for live
Thanks.
fire. Yes, lots of benefits to it for sure. No, that's so interesting. And that actually this is really the last question I wanted to make sure I asked you today, and that's where did all of those products go? Like the Taurus curve, which by the way, love my lovely content creator for She Shield, Lisa. She makes incredible highlights for this episode and for all the episodes on the Instagram and TikTok at She Shield Pod. Anyway, so I cannot wait for this highlight to drop and for her to put a picture of the curve so that the viewers can see what we're talking about.
Just bleep
But I'm
out the part where
curious.
I said, I mean, you can even, no joke, you can even put what I said about it in there because it is terrible. And
Okay,
I'm absolutely,
okay, no,
absolutely.
totally fair. And if you sat here and tried to defend every product that came out, to a pulp, I would be a little concerned. I
No.
appreciate the transparency. I'm curious, what has happened to all of the Taurus curves? Can you still buy one?
Well, let's ask. So one of our corporate partners is gunbroker.com.
Oh,
And
okay.
let's see if I go to Gunbroker right now, Taurus curve. There are
Besides
there
secondhand.
are there are three curves currently for sale on Gunbroker, because they are sort of they're honestly like I should buy one of these, just because it's such
Yeah.
an oddity at this point. It's like the Remington
Yeah.
51 and some of those other like interesting oddities. But yeah, it's still out there. You can get it. Wow, man. So a lot of the most of the old guns, that the ones that were sold, they're still out there. A lot of times, if you've got like a really old crappy Taurus and it breaks and you send it to us for repair, we'll just be like, here's a new G2C. Like, please let us keep this old hunk of crap. Here is a nice new
Nice.
gun that works and is reliable. So we've done that. We've gotten a lot of these guns back off the market. And that's kind of the
Okay.
other thing, is we're responsive to this stuff, right? If you send us a broken gun,
Hmm.
I have to caveat this, because every time I say this, somebody's like, oh yeah, well, my gun was there for 6 months. And then I go look into it, and it's like, because your gun needed this weird part that I have like 3 of, and they come from Brazil only when the moon is in the right phase or whatever. Uh,
Right.
but like, for the most part, if if you have a common issue with your gun, it's in our building for 72 hours and then it's back out the door, and that's all free. So, we are part and parcel of that cultural shift, is the dedication to fixing past fuck ups as well. So, or, taking them and chopping them up and using them for firewood or whatever it is that we do.
Right.
But yeah, no, so a lot of those
Right.
guns were, and there's very few curves floating around in the world because it wasn't a great seller, but some of the other stuff, they're still floating around out there, and we try to get them back when we can, or repair them and
Right.
replace them. But a lot of these guns are just sitting in sock drawers and they're never going to get shot. So hopefully they don't got a bad one. But like the new
Right.
stuff's all fine. Like, you go buy a G3C, it's great. I got one before I took this job as part of the consulting project. I shot 500 rounds through it. I think I can tell you. So one of the super nerd things I do is, ever since 2016, I've logged every round I fired. So I can tell you since 2016 exactly how many rounds of ammunition I've fired. I can tell you what guns I fired them through. But like right now, so the gun on my desk, that one's got 10,006 rounds through it. My carry gun, my executive grade, has 1,300 rounds. And these are all through guns that are not reliable, right? These are through guns that some people would
Okay.
be like,
Right.
oh, well, it's a Taurus. It obviously isn't going to hold up. Where's my G3? The G3C's got 1,300 rounds on it. So, and I know that's not a
Nice.
lot
Okay.
in like the grand scheme of like high level competition shooting.
Sure. Sure.
10,000 certainly is. But, if you look at again, back to this conversation about who Tom Givens calls them regular Earth people. Regular Earth people, a friend of mine and I have a joke where we talk about how if you built a gun that disintegrated into dust when you fired round number 500 through it, 99% of gun owners who bought it would never find out that it turns into dust. So
Yeah.
the ability to get these guns, and the fact that the other thing that I do when I do these endurance tests with our products, and this is specifically to avoid a certain type of criticism, is I buy them from internet retailers.
Okay.
Because what I don't want people to be able to say is, oh, well, Caleb, you work for the company, so you went through the factory and you handpicked one and then you gave it to a guy and they smoothed it up and they made sure it was good. No, I friggin' bought,
Okay.
I bought this thing from KY Gun Company, I think is where I got this one from,
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I go and I buy them, and that way I'm getting the same
Hmm.
guns that you guys are getting. So if there's something wrong with it, I'm gonna find out. So it's
Right.
just stuff like that, and I started consulting for Taurus 4 years ago, and then I got hired on almost 2 years ago now, and it's been a ton of fun. And I get to travel, I get to
Nice.
shoot, we get to sponsor matches, I get to do
Hmm.
fun interviews with people because, as you can tell, I like to talk.
Yes.
So yeah, no, it's been
No,
great.
but it's a good thing. As a
Mm,
podcast host, I appreciate when people talk. I can think of 2 episodes that I felt like I was,
or just
I don't
pulling
know, like
teeth.
I was like pulling teeth. Yeah, but and I'm not trying to say anything, disrespectful to those people. They answered questions kind of matter of factly, and they felt good about it, and that was their interview style, and that's totally fine. But no, I appreciate when you can go into detail about things, and I've learned so much from this episode. It's making me want to go and just shoot a few revolvers and test that out, which I don't know if you guys will have any at the range event, but
So
I'd love to like play with
that
them.
event is primarily for semi-automatic pistols, but I'll probably have a couple of
Right.
wheel guns with me because that's what will have been carrying anyways. So I usually
Right.
always have a couple of my personal guns with me. But if you're interested,
Okay.
and I'll send you the details for this, I'll happily comp you a slot in my revolver class. I have one coming up in Indiana in July, which for more
Oh,
information on
nice.
that,
Okay.
search Citizens Defense Research on Eventbrite, and you'll find all of the Citizens Defense Research classes, including fundamental revolver skills, July 13th and 14th, Terre Haute, Indiana.
Perfect. And it will be linked in the show notes as well. If that's easier for the listener, you can scroll down
Absolutely.
and click on the link. But I would love that. I've had a few students bring revolvers, but they were mostly curious about semi-automatic options. So
Hmm.
what we ended up doing is they would rent one from the range and then they wouldn't even touch the revolver. But I can confidently say I would not feel confident if they pulled out their revolver and really wanted to go shoot it. I would be like, let's do this.
You're like, all
So,
right. Well, the good news is there's no secret to shooting a revolver. It's just line up the sights and press the trigger in such a way that you don't disturb the sights. The problem is the sights
right.
are the sights suck and the trigger's heavy. So, just
Right.
two
Yeah,
little things. That's it. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, well, that's good to know because the people that came to these classes, they were women who brought either their one brought their husband's gun, the other one was gifted a revolver.
hmm.
So, and
You
they
see
were
that a
kind of
lot.
like, and they were both curious about like the rose sig, like just very like
Of course, the gun that I
female
like
marketed.
specifically talked shit about earlier in the show, the
Oh,
rose gold P365s. It's
oh,
I'm
really?
it's a good seller. I'm not a fan of
Gotcha.
I'm not a fan of the platform, just because the one, and
Okay.
this is a taste thing. So this is like, I have opinions.
Okay.
Like, I do not, so I've shot a bunch of the P365s, and for whatever reason, I don't like the recoil impulse. I think that it's too sharp
Huh.
for a gun in that category. And what I end up with
Okay.
is way more front sight lift on that gun. So I still shoot a ton of iron sights. I love red dots, but one of the other things that I've learned from this job is that the vast preponderance of concealed carriers do not have dots on their guns. So I think as an instructor, if you
Right.
don't know how to shoot irons, you are doing your students a disservice.
Sure.
So anyway, but
Yeah.
back to the 365, I get a lot more front sight lift on that platform than I do on 40, like a Glock 48, or even on our GX4 platform. And I think well, I don't think, I know for me, the reason why is because of the specific grip shape. So the 365 doesn't have an aggressive palm swell down on the bottom. And I like that because it helps me roll my hands down and lock the gun in a little bit better. So,
Okay.
an idea of what I'm talking about is if you look for like a bore sight Glock 19 with a Razorback mod. I just said a
Okay.
whole bunch of words that probably mean nothing. But
Definitely. But
yeah,
I
if you
can
look for a
Google it.
Boresight Glock 19 with the Razorback, that hump, what he does, and I don't have any semi-automatic pistols within arm's reach that have it, but what it does is it puts a hump on the back strap that goes into this curvy
Oh, I
bit
see it.
on your hand, and
Okay.
that helps you drive in my opinion, and with the way that I interact with guns, it helps me drive the gun a little bit better. So,
Huh.
there's some aftermarket grip modules for the 365 that do that, and I've never shot those. I'm sure I would like them better than the ones I have shot. So I'm
Yeah.
not like, so for the people out there who's like, oh, well, he just hates SIG because he works for another company. No, I hate SIG because I'm in the military and they replaced the Beretta with a SIG, and that hurt my fucking feelings because I loved my Beretta, loved it.
That's totally fair. And you are
Yeah,
entitled to your opinion. And
absolutely.
um I just did a review of the X macro and I'm like to just advocate. I just love it, like everything about it. But I also mentioned in my video that my background is the Walther PDPF, Glock 43X, Glock 19, and that's it. And
Hmm.
that everyone that shares their journey with you is coming from, their specific toolkit, which has various tools and also sometimes less tools than others. So, you have to like take the opinion of someone and consider what background they're coming from.
Well, you know what's
So
crazy?
mhm,
You got, and like, and I say this because this is something that genuinely makes me happy, is that you and a friend of mine, Tessa Booth, sorry, of Armed and Styled. So you guys
mhm,
are really
love
good
her.
examples of the benefits of the democratization of information that has happened in the internet era of firearms training and concealed carry. You skipped 10 years of fucking around with guns that don't work right, that don't fit your hand, with holsters that suck, and having to figure out a lot of this stuff on your own. You don't have 2 Tupperware totes full of crappy holsters that you tried and didn't work. I have those
Right.
totes. I have
Okay.
I have carried every terrible gun you can possibly think of, trying to figure out what was good and what wasn't good. And we live in this absolute golden age where someone like you and someone like Tessa, and I use you guys as very specific examples for this, you shortcut that because you found the right resources, you found the right information, you downloaded all of the good shit, you got none of the bad shit, and you're like, okay, I have a Glock 48 and I got a hollow sun on it and I've got a Filster holster and I carry palm pepper spray and I carry a flashlight for illuminating stuff. You fucking solved the problem. And it's fantastic because we have a level of education and we have a level of education and information out there that just hasn't been available before. Like all of this revolver stuff that I do, that I have dedicated my life to, really a huge chunk of my adult life to, is things that I had to figure out on my own. And it's not that any of this was new information. It's that the guys who knew it were either dead or they didn't make YouTube videos, right? Like all of the
Right.
steely-eyed killers from the 1960s and 70s and 80s who carried these guns in law enforcement and carried them off duty and maybe carried them a little bit illegally as armed citizens, they didn't have a mechanism of passing that information on, which now we do have those mechanisms, whether it's for semi-automatics or for revolvers. And part of what I do with the revolver thing is to create a everlasting store of that information so that the next version of me in 20 or 30 years doesn't have to figure it out on his own, doesn't have to do what I did. So yeah, and so it's so great, like when I talk to people like Tessa or people like you, and they're like, oh yeah, well I just went to Filster and I got a holster and I got the gun and I was like all set. I'm like, fuck, so much easier for you guys. And and I'm never
Yes,
going to be that
that's
old
fair.
guy who's like, oh, you whippersnappers have it so easy. I think it's great that you have it easy. That means
Right.
that the lifetime of work that my friends and I have done has actually worked, because that was what we wanted. We wanted
Absolutely.
it to be easier for the people that came after us.
That was beautifully said. And anytime I am grouped in with Tessa Booth is a compliment. So thank you.
Wait,
She
she's
was
the
a
best.
very big inspiration. Absolutely. We were actually just texting before this episode. I'll have to let her know that I just sat down with you. I didn't know that you guys, I mean, I've learned that everyone in this particular community that I respect are all connected. But to hear that you're like friends and everything, that's really exciting. But yeah,
She's
she's
actually,
incredible and she's,
that reminds me, I actually needed to, because
yeah.
she was the other person I was going to invite to the handgun thing. So I need to
Oh
text her
God,
and
please
invite her to
do.
that. Okay, I will.
I want to meet her in person. And she almost went to industry day, and I won't go into any more detail. She's been pretty public with like her moving around, but
Mhm.
the stars didn't align. But when I tell you, I was like scrounging for a way to get into industry day just to like meet her. I would love to officially meet her, so
Yeah, I'll
it'd be
see if I can
cool.
make that happen.
Yeah, she's incredible. For anyone listening who has not followed her, her at now is at Tessa. I believe it's underscore Booth. Her
Mhm.
name online is Armed and Styled, but she's kind of getting away from that right now. Even though she's still armed and styled,
Fact.
technically. So, right, fact, exactly, facts. No, that's awesome. And man, this has been such an incredible episode. I would love to do a follow up once that event passes.
Of course.
Remind me, it's March.
Yeah, March. Frick, I have so many
I
things on
have
my
it in
calendar that I'm like, it's
I
March
feel
at
that
some point.
it's in my calendar. I will put the link for it because it's open to the public.
Yes, it is. Yep, open
Correct.
enrollment,
Just double checking.
and it's March 28th
Yes,
and 29th. It's in Covington,
there it is.
Louisiana, which is outside of New Orleans. So that's the airport to fly into, is New Orleans.
Hmm.
It is, for the general public, it's $700. What that covers is you get access to 2 guns. You get 1,000 rounds of ammo that you're going to shoot out of those guns. You're going to get instruction from Melody Lauer and myself. The way it's going to work is Melody's going to do sort of day 1 and focus on concealed carry skills and things like that. And then day 2, I'm going to Ricky Bobby it a little bit, and we're going to see if we can push these guns and kind of run them hard up at the ragged edge. But and
Nice.
then what I don't believe I put in the event information is that two people are going to get to keep their guns for free. So we're going to give
Very
so
nice.
two of those guns
Okay.
we're going to give away at the end of the class. There's going to be so I friggin' love giving away guns, and I have a job that lets me do it. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a little bit of maybe a little contest, a little
Ooh,
test of
okay.
skill, and the winners get to
Yeah.
keep their guns. But then everybody else who's at the class, you can buy your gun for 40% off MSRP. So we're going to give everybody who comes to the class
Very
the
nice.
opportunity to buy that gun at VIP pricing. So I think it's
Very
you know
nice.
it's there are I can't think of any classes where you're going to get a full 2 days of training and 1,000 rounds of free ammo and free and get to use a
Definitely not.
gun that you didn't have to pay for yeah, it's a crazy deal. Like so
Oh,
please
it's
sign
great.
up,
Yeah,
all the people.
absolutely. All the people. I will link it in the show notes as well, the direct
Perfect.
link to that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Caleb. Oh my goodness, so many good things in this episode. I know before we got on, we booked this pretty quickly, so I was
Hmm.
like, oh my god, what are we going to talk about today? So thank you for just being such a lovely guest, like
Oh
the
yeah, it's my
ideal
pleasure.
guest. Oh my goodness, yes. And again, love to do a follow up after the event. I'm of course going to do. My plan is to do kind of a YouTube review of it,
Perfect.
so be on the lookout for that, listener. I always do something at the end of my episodes. I like to ask the guest speaker what they want to send the listener off with, if you don't mind.
I'm going to send the listener off with a quote from my friend Melody, who once said, "Don't let your desire to protect your life let you lead a life that's not worth protecting."
Ah, I literally got chills. That's awesome. Yeah, and oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet her. She was probably the first woman that I heard about in the industry that I like immediately respected from just reading her blog pieces and just what she's done so far. So very, very
I'll make
excited
sure to
when
tell
you
her that
said her
you
name.
said
I was
that
like, I'm in.
because
Yeah,
we text regularly, so I'll make sure to pass that on.
incredible. Absolutely. And of course, getting her on the podcast would be just an
I
honor. So
I'll
hopefully
make that happen. I'll make that call like
oh, please. Thank you
immediately.
so much. Oh, amazing. Do it right now. Just kidding. No, I'm so excited. That sounds awesome. I love how I can just, the industry, I said this yesterday with Matt Little, like this industry, or actually, no, I said it on the podcast with Lisa. We're actually releasing a Valentine's special
Oh,
for
fun.
what to get your Valentine self-defense edition and what not to buy your Valentine. And we also add in some fun segments in there like heart-shaped jewelry and our thoughts on that and stuff. So that's dropping format. But yeah, I
Oh, that's
talked to him about
fantastic.
how it's exciting. We talked about how this industry is so it is vast, but it's also very small. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like everyone's connected somehow, but it's also like I learn about people all the time that I had no idea existed, and they're incredible and they're doing incredible
Well,
things.
yeah, because we all go to the same events and teach. Like we just Taurus just signed up to sponsor the Guardian conference this year,
Yes,
so
incredible.
we're gonna
Yeah.
do that.
Yes.
And we teach I teach at the Gunsight Revolver Roundup every year in November. With Chuck is one of the
Wonderful.
instructors there. Everybody goes to TacCon, so it's at
On
a
the wait list.
certain level. Oh, you're on the wait list? I might be able
I'm
to
on the
fix
wait
that
list.
too because I'm not going to be able to go this year. And so I've
Oh?
got Air Force orders that take
Oh
priority.
wow.
So, but I'll
Okay.
I'll
Yeah, that
email
sounds
them and be like,
important.
hey, I'm not going to be able to go. Can you give my slot to this specific person on the wait list? But
That would be
because I
amazing,
wasn't
but
sure what I was going to do about
yeah.
it, but I'll send that email at some point next week. But anyway,
Okay.
but yeah, no, when you reach a certain level in the industry, especially in this space, right? The highly focused self-defense, competition shooting space. Everybody knows everybody, and we all have taken each other's classes, and I've taken class and it's great because you get all these great training opportunities. I've trained with Ernest Langdon and Craig and Jedi and Jared Reston and Chuck, and the list goes on and on and on. And then you do it for 10 years and you wake up and then it's the people training with you now. And you're like, when the hell did this happen? So for me
Right.
personally, it's been a fantastic journey. Um, it's, it's been a career, and it's something where I don't have to do TPS reports. I get to expense ammunition, and I get to do something I'm very, very passionate about. And I love it. If people want to come train with me, I'll do the lame part now. So if people want to come
Okay.
train with me,
Got it.
you can go to the easiest way to find our classes is to go and Google search Citizens Defense Research Eventbrite, and that'll take you to our page on Eventbrite that'll have all of our upcoming classes, including my revolver class. If you want to come to the Taurus handgun experience, we'll have links in the show note for that. But if you Google Taurus handgun experience, pops up. And then what was the other one? Oh yeah, the Pat Rogers Memorial Revolver Roundup at Gunsight this year. That's not until November, and we've already got 84 seats filled on that. So if you want to learn about revolvers, that is the thing. The instructors, myself, Chuck Haggard, Daryl Bolke, Brian Eastridge. I'm going to leave somebody out, and they're going to get them. Cecil Birch, Dave Dolan. Like, it is like the mecca for learning shit about revolvers. I've taught at it for the last 2 years. And it's without a doubt, it's my favorite event of the year. It's the one that when I go to it, like leading up to it, I'm usually pretty burned out because I've been on the road all summer and most of the fall. And I'm like, oh, I'm so done. And then I come back from that and I'm like, let's go. So
energized. Nice.
Yeah,
that's a huge compliment.
It charges me up because it's just spending time with people that I like and shooting guns, and friggin' doesn't like that. Incredible. And then obviously, if you're interested in more information on Taurus firearms, you go to taurususa.com or Rossi USA for Rossi Firearms and Heritage Manufacturing. That's heritagemfg.com for information on all the different brands and guns that we have. And I will tell you guys this as well for people who are listening. If you hit me up on my social, I respond to DMs on Instagram. If you have questions about guns and stuff like that, I'll probably respond to you, because I like talking to people about guns. And if you're like, hey, I'm looking at these two Tauruses, which one should I get? Yeah, I'll try to help you out. All right. So I try to be out there for the people.
That's incredible. Yeah, I can think of so many times, especially when buying my first handgun, I did not know who to reach out to. And part of She Shield is making sure that people know what resources are out there. So thank you so much for that. That is an incredible gift to the public. So how exciting. And I'll link all of your socials as well in the show notes. Absolutely. Thank you. I loved this conversation so much. Speaking of energized, I feel energized. I feel excited for training and learning, which is just so important in this industry. It can get kind of overwhelming. So when I have discussions like this that excite me, I'm always so excited to drop the episodes and let it, excite someone else. So
awesome.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Seriously, it's been awesome. And I'm so excited to meet you in person. I'm excited to tell the guys at Live Fire that I'm going to get to go down there and everything. So
yeah, it's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking your time to come on. And if you're listening and you want the full video of today's episode, you can go to the YouTube channel for She Shield at She Shield Pod. If you want exclusive content, we are revamping our Patreon soon. So jump on board and you'll receive a thank you note, stickers, and we may or may not be coming out with patches. Just kidding, we totally are. I will send those to the current Patreons. Even better. That was a lengthy process. Oh my God.
I know.
The people at this company don't even want to work with me anymore. I can just feel it. They've had to email back and forth with me for a month and a half. So they're going to be good patches because I've spent the time building them. But anyway, if you or anyone you know is a firearms owner experiencing a mental health crisis, maybe they're deploying, leaving the country, and they have guns in their home with their families that aren't trained with firearms, you can look into holdmyguns.org. They're an organization that will connect you with a local gun shop or FFL to store your firearm for you. The link to access their website and to find a storage location partner is available in the show notes. If you're interested in sponsoring a charity event they have coming up, I will also link the information for that as well. I believe it is in March. And if you have your own brand and you're listening, or you know anyone that has a brand that could contribute, please share the charity event information with them. In the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Thanks for listening.
Attention all knife enthusiasts. Today's episode is sponsored by the one and only Cold Steel Knives. For over 3 decades, Cold Steel has been leading the way in the knife industry, dedicated to creating the world's strongest and sharpest blades. They've pioneered countless innovations that have become industry hallmarks of quality and sophistication, from their revolutionary checked Kraton handles to the iconic Tonto point blade systems. Cold Steel's progressive accomplishments have set new standards in the field. Their trademark triad locking mechanism remains unrivaled by any of their competitors, proving its unbeatable performance time and time again. Their impressive lineup goes beyond just knives. They offer swords, tomahawks, machetes, cutlery, and a wide range of tools for everyday carry. Trusted by military, law enforcement, emergency services, self-defense professionals, and martial arts practitioners, Cold Steel is renowned for quality, strength, reliability, and dependability. Where strength, safety, and performance come together for over 3 decades and counting, use code SHESHIELD at checkout, that's SHESHIELD, to save and to support the pod.